Good afternoon, everyone. We may have a few more coming in, but does everyone have a handout? I think they do. We'll have a special guest stopping by toward the end of this for a few comments. So we'll keep going till that point. We'll be done by 3:15. Welcome to our Campus Quality Survey Executive Summary presentation. Today we'd like to share with you information on our latest Campus Quality Survey, which we did last fall in 2012. And before we get into the survey, I'd like to introduce a few of the other presenters, acknowledge a few others, and then we'll proceed with the details. First of all, my name is Mike Kubishak. I'm in institutional research for Bismarck State. If you've never met me, this is me. Additionally, we'll have two others talking this afternoon. Kara Welk, which is here. Kara is our research coordinator also in institutional research. Annette Martel, who recently joined us as the effectiveness and assessment coordinator, will also present today, and she's part of the effectiveness office led by Jane Schultz. And Jenny Gissinger, she is the research associate in the institutional research office, and she helped with everything, getting us organized today, getting our presentation put together. So that is our team. So let's look a little more at the campus quality, get into some detail, and then we will ask some questions and answers at the end. As we go through the presentation, if you're looking, and I've seen you already are looking at your handout, there's an idea, your ideas item on the back. Keep in mind as we go through anything that comes up and you would like to present back as questions or ideas for us to talk about toward the end of the session. So what is the Campus Quality Survey? For those who have taken this, I'm assuming everyone has taken this. Are there any who haven't been part of this survey at this point? One. Okay, great. This was done and is typically done every 2 years at Bismarck State as part of our quality improvement focus. The tool itself is used to gauge your perceptions of how well we're doing related to our practices, our policies, our procedures, even the culture behind quality improvement. And this tool helps give us a sense of how well we're doing from your perspectives. We've done this campus quality survey 6 times every 2 years, going back to 2002. The survey itself is a paper pencil survey, 95 questions overall, grouped in basically 2 different formats. The first 60 being focused on how things are from your perspective today, how things should be in the future or tomorrow or going forward. That rating scale is a 1 to 5 point rating scale, the high being on a scale of agreeable from largely disagree to largely agree. The other 35 questions of the survey are a scale of 1 to 5, rating our programs, our services, our activities, and your satisfaction on how well those are doing. The survey was sent through interoffice mail this year, as it has typically, to our benefited employees. There were 345 sent out, 242 returns for a 70% retention or completion rate on that particular survey. That is pretty normal for us. It's a good response rate, and we typically see that with this survey. 20 minutes and it's pretty much done, back in the envelope and returned. How are the questions themselves, those groupings of questions, handled within the survey? 8 major categories within this quality focus survey. The questions group and roll up into these 8 categories. You can look through those a little bit. Those who are familiar with our AQIP accreditation process might see common names or relatable categories that the AQIP categories fall into here. We can, as we look into the details of the survey and the results, do some aligning to our accreditation method, and this particular survey can be used to support some of those concepts and how well we're feeling we're doing. So when we look at those 8 categories and just kind of group together the overall score for the category, and remembering that there are 5, 6, 7 questions in the survey related to each of those 8 categories. Scoring those questions, rolling them up by category, the means are coming in somewhere in the range for the how it should be in the upper 4s or middle to upper 4s for a couple of the categories here. That is the how it should be, your view of how things should be. Again, on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being best. The how it is it now, your perception of where we're really at, are lower than the 4s, mid 3s, 3.7s. So there's a gap between what you believe things should be like as to how you perceive they are. And that's the important part, as we'll see going forward here. This is a graphical representation of those 8 categories again, showing where in the green the gaps are at between how it should be, how it is. We'll have a little more discussion on what those performance gaps are like and how they may have changed over time. The idea here is, how do we interpret what that gap really means? Are we way off from expectation? Are we pretty close to expectation? Do we have room for additional improvement? We need more discussion behind that. This is looking at those same performance gaps over those 8 quality categories for the last 3 administrations of this survey. You can see there is some up and down between those category gaps. Not a lot of fluctuation, no major differences. Again, to interpret what that means, are we doing well? Why did we go down? Why did we go up? That's for discussion and for additional pieces of that puzzle to come together to understand. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Kara Welk, and she will go into some more of the detail.
So Mike touched on the 8 major categories. I'm going to shift the focus a little bit to specific items that were in the survey. This is also on your handout if it's hard to read up there. But these 2 tables here show our smallest and our largest performance gaps. So keeping in mind, again, those performance gaps are employee expectations versus your actual perceptions. Things that are in the darker blue, those items are items that were new to the survey this year. They're the campus-specific items that we put in. We chose to put in. The Operations Council developed those items. So we can't compare them to results from past years, but it is still important to think about them. And then items with a little asterisk by them, those are items that either scored in the 10 smallest or 10 largest in 2010. So, for example, on the left here, you can see the 10 smallest, and 8 of the 10 of those were repeats from 2010. So we had some kind of consistency in what we considered meeting our expectations pretty well. And in the 10 largest, there's 3 of them that have that asterisk. So there's 3 items that continue to be a challenge for us or continue to not quite meet how we think things should be. We also, as Mike said, answered 30 questions about programs, services, and activities on campus. A couple of notes to make. 29 of those 30 items we rated above 3. So this is again on a 1 to 5 scale, 1 being poor and 5 being excellent. So we felt that 29 of those 30 items were at least above average. The only one that rated lower is health and nursing services, which I don't think is a surprise to most of us since we do not have health and nursing services currently. Again, you can break these out into the highest as well as the lowest services in those graphs there. Again, this is also on your handout. A couple of notes that we wanted to point out. Among those highest, that top graph there, that top chart, those first 4 were also among the highest in 2010. And the first 3, cafeteria and food services, payroll services, and maintenance and custodial services, those have been among the 5 highest rated programs or services at our school all 6 times we've done this survey. So they continue to be something that you feel is done well on our campus. And specifically, cafeteria and food service has been the #1 highest rated service all 6 times. So we like our burgers and we like our fries and we appreciate the work that the cafeteria and food services does for us. Among the lowest you can see there, there's some trends that we saw as well. A couple things to point out. The health and nursing services, like I mentioned before, it's been ranked one of the lowest all the times that we've done this survey as well. And then communication with other departments. That continues to be something that comes up in surveys, this survey as well as other surveys repeatedly. And it's something that has been a challenge for our campus and continues to be a challenge. I also wanted to point out with some of these programs and departments that are listed in the lowest, a lot of changes and things have been happening in those areas that might not be reflected in the survey results due to the timing of the survey. The survey was done in September, October of this fall, and I think a couple of those areas were really doing some big changes, some big shifts in what they're doing and how their processes are working. So that might not be reflected until the next time we administer the survey. The last few questions on the survey really wanted to look at overall satisfaction and overall impressions. So the question, rate your overall satisfaction with employment, can be broken out here in that pie chart you see. Again, it's also on your handout. The light green and the dark green together is the satisfied to very satisfied. This was pretty similar from 2010 to 2012. It dropped just a little bit. In 2010, 87% of employees were satisfied or very satisfied. This year we were at 84%. So just a slight dip in how satisfied everybody is. But overall, the takeaway I think from this pie chart shows that people are pretty happy. Employees are pretty happy at BSC and felt their satisfaction is pretty high. When you look at some of those less satisfied individuals, the somewhat dissatisfied and not satisfied at all, you see the percentages there, but it's important to also keep in mind how many people that reflects. That less than 1%, that was 1 person, and then the 6% represents 15 people. So we're talking 16 people out of the 242 who did this survey who aren't feeling very satisfied with their employment. Then overall impression of quality. Again, we're doing excellent in this as well. Employees felt that BSC's quality is excellent and good. You can see in the light green and the dark green again is the majority of the pie chart. These results were fairly similar to 2010. In 2010, 91% of employees felt that the quality was good or excellent, and in this 2012 administration, it was 88%. So again, a slight drop, but still overall very positive. So those are just sort of a brief overview of the results. There's a lot more in depth you could go into, but we really wanted to touch on some of the highlights in the results that you felt were important or things that you said to us. And at this point, we kind of want to talk about what to do next. What are the next steps we want to address? And with that, I'll turn it over to Annette.
Thank you. So in the spirit of analyzing and utilizing data, let's talk about what to do next. These are some recommendations that came from Performance Horizons, which is the company that administers this survey. And they suggest that we commend the areas that are doing well and try to get a little more information from them and figure out how they're doing so well and what we can do to emulate them and also to encourage them to continue their quality improvement efforts. We need to recognize the strategies that have worked for us, including employee empowerment and teamwork, strategic planning, and CQI, and continue to implement those processes for continuous change. We need to also focus on making incremental improvements in the challenging areas. And one of the areas, being trust and communication among and between departments. And I think it's important that we think not only in terms of what can someone else do to improve these areas, but what can I, right in my area of the organization, as an empowered employee, do to improve these performance gaps. So remember, these are just perceptions of employees, so there may be other data that show other things about these different services and so on. And like I said, as an AQUIP campus, we should all be striving toward continuous quality improvement. So with that in mind, here are a few suggestions of how BSC can use the CQS results for future improvements. Continue to use important trend data, including these results and other campus surveys and assessment results, to focus where improvements need to go. We need to make sure that we're valuing each other as employees and providing training and recognition to make sure that people feel confident and empowered. We suggest that budgeting be done with these results in mind, and as well as other relevant data. Reinforce our innovation practices, and like I said, with the communications and trust issues coming up in past surveys as well, just think about how can we use new thinking to solve old problems. So, and with that, also building that communication and trust, and thinking, how can I, for my own little world, be a better communicator and communicate more with other constituents that would be interested in what my department is doing. So we just need to remember that we're all in this together. We're all part of the BSC family, and we can all make changes, large or small, for the betterment of everyone here. So before I let Larry take the stage, I just wanted to, first of all, open it up for questions, but also see what ideas you've thought of in your little idea column on your handout for ways that we can continue to improve the quality of BSC.
Yes. I have a question. For the highest and lowest scores for the program, service, or activity, you said there was 30 questions that were asked to rate that? Okay. For example, I see that student admissions and registration services is on the lower end. What are those questions that would have ranked us as being the lower end? Is there a way to get those so that we can look to see what we think people's perception is may not be what their actual perception is? And how do we improve it if we don't know what area the questions were ranked on? I don't remember the question.
Yeah, and absolutely, we can get anybody a copy of the survey, because I know, We took it in September, October. That's a while ago, so a lot of us probably don't remember exactly what it looked like and what was on there. Those program services and activities, I should have clarified just a little bit. They're actually not questions. They just list that program, service, or activity. And then we respond if we think it's poor to excellent. So student admissions and registration, that was one of the 30 listed program services and activities. Does that make sense?
Yeah, is there a way, do they have what, faculty versus staff?
They did. They do break it out by department heads versus faculty versus administrative professional staff versus other staff.
Because that would be something that would be helpful when we're looking at
Yep.
what we can do to improve. Who is it that isn't as satisfied as we'd like them to be?
And those are that's the kind of feedback that we need to hear too. We get a big binder of results from Performance Horizons, and we had to pick and choose sort of what we wanted to bring to campus, but we want to make all of this available to campus. And these presentation and an executive summary and the handout are going to be on SharePoint. But if campus feels that they would like to see all of the results, we can definitely share that. That's not something that we're keeping private in our office only. It's just a lot to sort through, and I know a lot of you don't have the time to do that. But if you're curious about specific questions and how different employees, based on what sort of employment category they're in, rated different things, we definitely can provide that to you.
I was just curious about performance gaps. They all went up from the last time, and I don't know if that's a statistically relevant increase, but what does that mean? Because to me, that's a really frustrating outcome to see it going up when really you think that we're doing things that were exceptionally out of general. So I'm just curious about your take on that.
I'm curious about your take on that, actually. And I say that, I turn it back on to all of you. You know, we've had discussions in our department about what we think that might mean, but I'm more curious kind of what the campus as a whole thinks that might mean. I think there's different things or different considerations that might be taking place. A lot is going on right now on our campus and just within the system. So maybe all those things that are swirling around impacted or affected how people responded to this survey. But maybe there's something else that I'm not thinking of or that we haven't thought of. Yeah, Jeff?
And going a little further, this is just for 3 surveys, so it would be nice to see all the surveys listed out here as far as, you know, for the last 12 years, all this is compared. So we can look at it, maybe there is something we can take out of that.
And that's a great point. I will say 2010 was kind of our best results yet. So when you just compare to 2010 to 2012, it looks like we might be going down in a lot of these different areas, but that's not the whole picture, because we've really been going up quite a bit and then had a great year and then had just a slight drop this past time. So did either of you want to say anything to that? Okay. But we can definitely, again, if that's something that you would like to see, we'll definitely put together a chart and we can put it up on our SharePoint for campus to see as well. Were you thinking just in those 8 major categories, or was there something beyond that?
If that's what we're tracking, that would be irrelevant.
We can track whatever you want. Almost, I should say, almost. Other questions or thoughts? Marnie, did I answer your question, or kind of, not really? Okay.
Did any ideas come to mind? Did anyone in their head say, hey, I want to focus on this particular item? And you've got an idea generated in your head as well you'd like to share?
Well, Darcy just asked me something too, and it's going off of Kenny's question. Why is student admissions and registration process lumped together? Because they are 2 separate.
That is an excellent, excellent point, and one that we have talked about as well. That is just how the survey administrators chose to write the survey. But I think it's a good point in that those are 2 very different and very big services and programs that we're talking about. So to put them together might skew the results a bit. And I think that's, with any survey we do, we're limited by how the survey is written, since we're not doing this ourselves. So those are some of the restrictions that we just have to keep in mind, but something to think about for sure.
So if we have all this data, I mean, we can look at our own departments, but how do we know, I guess, where do you go from here? I mean, who's going to take the lead? Who's going to say, you know, the trust is really an issue? Do we look at just our department and improve the trust by doing different things amongst our department? Do we have, I guess, all the data in the world is nice to know, but if you don't do anything with it, and how are we going to ensure that next time the gaps aren't even higher?
And I'll jump on that in the sense of, this is one tool we're using, and it is it's an indirect measure of the trust. And can you really measure trust in a direct way? I don't know. But indirectly, this tool is only one part of that question. What other ways might we look at that item, whether it's trust, communication, any other item, and have some direct measure to where we think we are and where we want to be, and show movement. Or it could be anything other that relates to this kind of topics. The takeaway here is how do we take this piece and additional pieces we identify, sit down and say, what is this telling us and what should we do? And part of what we're trying to do is to bring information in your directions, and we invite all of you to come our directions so we can sit down and start helping those conversations develop.
Okay.
Our special guest today.
Yeah. I actually sat through the whole presentation yesterday and had a meeting now, so I'm running late to you guys, but I do want to talk a little bit about this. First, I want everybody to know that I really appreciate that we now have a team that can actually get these surveys and do something with them. We get some results. You know, we always are doing surveys, and a lot of times we're not getting that information back, and so you wonder, you're doing the surveys and you don't have any information. So now that we have the Title III grant and we've actually got a full team in place to be able to do this, I really appreciate that, and we're going to do more of that. You know, people make comments to me, I'm filling out surveys, and it's like they're going into a dark hole someplace. And that's not going to happen anymore. We've got a team put together, and we're going to get that information out, number one. Number two is, I'm thrilled with the results of this survey, okay? So I know our records and admissions people are looking pretty closely at this thing, but take a look at this. Our lowest high score is 3.9. Our highest low score is 3.4. There's only a 0.5 difference between the lowest high score and the highest low score. So that means this is really, I don't know if that's even statistically significant to be that close. It just so happens that that's how it stacks up. And as you know from this, the important thing is the gap. The gap is the important thing. So if you take a look on the blue side here, so for example, this institution believes in continuous quality improvement. The gap is 0.25. My goodness, that means that, now this is we're calling the shots here. We're evaluating ourselves. And we're saying that we believe that continuous quality improvement, this institution believes in continuous quality improvement, we believe this is the standard, and where we're at is 0.25 off of that standard. That's pretty darn good. And for those of you that read my email I sent out a month or so ago when we first got the results, and I just wanted to quick send some stuff out to you, I pointed out that when you take a look at our worst, the 10 largest gaps, when you look at that and you compare us to national standards, it's not even in the ballpark. You know, there would be many, many schools that would like their smallest performance standards to be equal to our largest. And so we're doing really, really well as far as I'm concerned. So you take a look at the gaps on the quality categories, there's not one of them that's even at 1. And when you look at the national results, it's very different. So I'm thoroughly delighted with these, with the results here, okay? So I think that we're heading in the right direction. I agree with all the questions that were asked, you know, and that information is out there. You can get those questions. Now, is it possible to get the questions relative to an area? Like, can the admissions and records people actually see what questions were asked or not?
We can group those programs, service areas by that designation in the survey and
Okay.
show the breakout by force or employees.
And that would help.
So we could get that to you, but the point is, and my point is, this is so small, the differences here, that I don't want anybody to be losing any sleep over it, okay? These are very good survey results. You know, when you take a look on the satisfaction here over here, let's look at the bottom one first, you know, overall impression, the quality of BSC. Overall impression, the quality of BSC. Those of us that work here, less than 1%, okay? Now, full-time employees, how many people took the survey? 250? 242, okay, 242 people. Less than 1% is like 2. Okay, so out of 240 people, 2 people said, less than 2 people, so that could be 1 person said that our quality was inadequate, and you end up with that. But look at everybody that said it's excellent and it's good and even average. So these are good results. I can guarantee you some of our sister institutions would kill to have results like this, okay? So these are really, really very good results. So I'm pleased with them. I would ask everybody to take a look at this. You know, we end up putting things in these categories because that's the way it breaks out. But the reality is that the difference between our lowest scores and our highest scores is probably statistically not that important. It's important to know that. And as Michael said, this is one data point on everything else that we do. It is interesting that health and nursing services was rated the lowest considering we don't have them. Right?
Yet it is underway.
And it is underway. Some of you may not have heard, we've got negotiations going on with UND right now, and I think up in the gymnasium, armory? Up in the armory, they're going to modify an area up there. We're going to do some construction up there, and they're actually going to have one of our nursing faculty will be overseeing nursing students, and there will be doctors from the UND family clinic downtown that will be coming up here a couple of days a week. So we will have some of those health services that we don't currently have, so we're addressing that thing. The issue of the trust, building communications and trust is on here someplace, I know that. We've been addressing that every year, every survey that comes out as one of the issues. I told the group not so long ago that you're stuck with me until we solve that problem, because ever since I've been here, people say there's not trust between departments. And so we've been having even some supervisor training sessions now on building a community of trust. How can we get trust going between us? And I think it's really an important thing. So we're going to keep working on that. But I'm delighted with the results of this. I know more results are available, right? You can go on and click on and you can start reading the questions, you know, to remind yourself of what the questions were and stuff like that. But I wouldn't want any area on this campus to be beating themselves up because they came up at a certain spot on this list, because these are good survey results. Okay, well, thank this team for putting together such a great program.